Hi, welcome to this SQL tutorial video. Today we're going to look at creating our own tables and working with tables. So as you've seen in previous videos that I've done, generally when we're doing a select, we are going to get information, or we're trying to get information from tables. So if I just do an example here, there we've got a select against the person table within the person schema. And it returns near 20,000 rows with all of these columns of data. So that's fine, and we've seen that before. What we're going to look at now is we're going to create our own table. We're going to do an introduction to creating tables, inserting data into tables, and just generally working with our own tables. So let's get rid of that. The syntax to create a table, quite straightforward, is create a table. You need to give the table a name, so we'll just call it my table in this case. And then every table needs a set of columns in order to store data. So create table my table. Then we have circular brackets, and within those circular brackets we give our column names and column definitions. So I'm going to format it like this, like I like to. So our first column we're going to call column 1, and then following the name of our column we've got to give it a data type. So I'm going to give it an integer. That's fine. Our table exists. If I execute that, it says we've created, the command has completed successfully, and I can say select star from my table. There's nothing in it, but the table exists. I can now put data in it. If I try and create that table again, it's going to say, hold on a minute, you can't create a table with the same name. So I cannot create that table again, which kind of makes sense. So I'm going to play with this table a little bit, with the makeup of this table, and for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to drop the table before I'm going to drop it, then I'm going to recreate it. So if I highlight this and I say drop table, it says, yep, your command successfully completed. If I now try and run that, it'll say, I don't know what my table is. It doesn't exist. So I need to create it again. So let us add more columns to our table. When you're adding more columns, they've got to be separated by a comma. So I'll put a comma at the end of there. And I want to call this column 2, and we'll say it's chart 1. So there's our table, and if I create that by pressing F5, if it now exists, if I execute that, we're now seeing column 1 and column 2. So let me drop that again, and let's add some more columns. So we can call it whatever we like. What we have to be careful of is well, there can't be spaces in column names. So I couldn't say, if I could type it, that is, I couldn't do that as a column name with a date time. It doesn't like that. You can create column names with spaces, but you've got to surround them with square brackets like that, and that will be accepted. Oh, the reason I've got that funny message there is because I need to separate it by a comma rather. So you can put spaces, but you've got to put them square brackets around it. Equally, you've got to be careful that you don't use kind of a keyword that already exists. You're allowed to, but you just got to be careful because it causes confusion. So as an example, let's say I want to have a date time column and I want to call it date time. Well, all right, you can do that, but you can see now that's blue because it is a recognized kind of keyword in SQL. So yeah, you can do it, but it's going to cause confusion. Similar to something like, maybe, is it app name? Well, what if we did like an existing function name as a column name? It's just going to cause confusion, particularly when you're kind of selecting columns and things. So better just to be kind of mindful about the name of columns as you're doing it. Okay, so we've got 4 columns now. Let's create our table and select star from my table. There it is. Let's put some data in. Insert into. So this is the syntax. Insert into my table. Values, and then in brackets the data you want to put in. So the first is an integer, so let's just put a 1 in there. The second is a 1 character length string, so we'll just put that in there. The third is a varchar 20, so we can put anything in there. And the fourth is a date time. Now, because the column's a date time doesn't mean you've got to put a time in there. Date is absolutely fine. So let's put that in. So that, now we can insert that data into there, and if we run that, now we can see our data. What if I want to insert a second column? All right, well, we can do that. So let's just change that, and we'll do that to that. Oops. And we'll put that data. Maybe a third column. So I haven't inserted this second column yet. If I want to insert another column, like above when you're building your table columns, you've got to separate it by commas. So, and also they've got to be surrounded in this case by circular brackets. So now I'll put 3. Okay, so if I run those 3 lines, that will insert 2 rows into my table. Now if I run that, there's my table and there's my data. Now then, let's just look at a couple more examples of options when you're creating tables. So I'm going to drop that. This first column, this integer column, this number column, I actually want it to iterate one at a time as I insert data into my table. I don't want to be responsible for putting 1, 2, and 3 in here. I want SQL to do that for me. So you can do that by having something called an identity, and then in brackets 1, 1, and the first one is the number to begin at, and the second one is the iteration each time a new line is created. So what I'm saying there is start at number 1, and when I insert a new line, add 1 to the previous number. So as an example, have I created this? No, I don't think I have. So let me create this. As an example, I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm just going to run those lines again. And if I do a select, you can see now that I've no longer included the column 1. In fact, I cannot include the column 1. SQL is responsible now for this first column and the data in it, 1 and 2. So that's worked. And if I change this example slightly and say begin at 10 and add 100 each time, and now insert into my table, let's see what's happened there. So it's began at 10. The next row that's been inserted is 110. It's began here and it adds that every time. So if I had a third row, pardon me, in fact, I'll add this lot here. Oh yeah, sorry, I need to put a comma to separate each of those. So now I've got 5 rows in here, and you'll see it begins at 10, 110, 210, 310, 410. So you can see the pattern based on this identity. Now also, what I don't want to have to bother doing is this date column. I don't want to worry about putting a date in every time. This column is to show me the date when this row was inserted into my table. So I can give it a default. And my default's going to be get date, which is the syntax for now in SQL. I've shown it in a previous video. If I just do select get date, it's now. If I run it again, you'll see these milliseconds are changing because the get date says tell me the exact system date as of now. So that's fine. So I'm going to create my table to have an identity column. I'm going to change this a little bit. We'll see. We'll start at 1, but we're going to go by 150 every time, maybe. So now our date column, we don't need to worry about anymore. The date column will be populated by SQL using this default. So now I want to get rid of that. Get rid of that. And now if I do an insert here. Okay, so the reason it doesn't like that is because it's unsure. Even though we've got an identity in a default, it's still unsure where these two columns are going to go into. So in brackets, what we can say is this. We can say these are the columns that we are inserting our data into. So column 2 and column 3, column 2, column 3. So insert into my table into these two columns this data, and so it's got to be in that order, column 2 then 3, because that's what I've put in the brackets here. So now if I run that, it works. And if I do my select here, we get 1, then 150, then 301. So it's iterating by 150 each time, beginning at 1. B, C, D, there's our data, and then this is the date. We inserted at exactly the same moment. So now if I insert a new line here, oh sorry, because I've got a comma there. If I insert a new line here, I'll put that comma back, otherwise I'll trip myself up. You'll see that the date time now will be ever so slightly different. There you go, up by half a minute. That's as far as I'm going to go with this introduction to tables. I hope you found this video helpful.